Rose, Odette, and I am going to interview myself for this podcast. I'm the first guest for Cadillac Simply the Best podcast, and I've been told that I need to interview myself before I interview anyone else. And so here goes. I hope that it goes well. So I have a series of questions that I'm supposed to ask myself. And first, I need to introduce myself to the listeners and tell you a bit about my background and my journey up until this point. So my background is I was born in Owasso, Michigan, and my father worked for General Motors. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, and I had two older brothers, and I had an amazing childhood. My childhood was great. By 3 years old, I was put in dancing class. I took tap, ballet, and jazz, and I really loved it. And if you look behind me, you can see my shoes. I have my toe shoes, my ballet shoes, and a couple of my tap shoes that I used through the years. And through the years, we ended up raising Boston Terrier puppies, and we would show them at dog shows. And we ended up finishing 3 champions out of the same litter. And that year, my parents' dog Molly won #1 dog in the United States for having more champions that year than any other female dog that year. They call him a bitch. Anyway, and so I did that through 4th, 5th, and 6th and 7th grade. And in 7th grade, I went back to dancing full time. And I really got into tap and ballet and jazz especially. And the dancing school that I went to is called Bohatti's out of Owasso, Michigan. And they were not your typical dance studio for a small town. The Bohatti sisters were known for dancing on Broadway, being a part of the George Gobel lineup. They were part of the Gold Diggers, which was a big dance line in the 60s and 70s. And so they were amazing. And there were 4 sisters that taught dance in and around Owasso, Flint, and Saginaw. And the school is still going. It's still in Owasso, and I think, or maybe it's in Chesaning now. But it's an amazing school. And one of the things that they insisted upon, if you wanted to be a Bohatti dancer, is that you had to go into beauty pageants. And so they signed me up for a beauty pageant, and I went into my first beauty pageant, pretty much a country bumpkin, just kind of going to dancing class because I love to dance. And I ended up winning Miss Owasso, and then went on to the state competition and danced a Polynesian barefoot dance for my number, and was 3rd runner-up to Miss Michigan back in the day. And it was an awful lot of fun. My mother, oh my God, God bless her soul, her name is Mary Lou Odette, and she made all my dresses, all my costumes. When we went down to Ypsilanti and Eastern Michigan University for the week-long pageant, she had dresses. She had a whole rack of dresses ready for me. She had it because we had to do interviews. We had to do swimsuit. It was just like Miss Michigan or Miss America. It was very competitive, and it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of heartbreak too, because my very best friend was also in the competition, and she did not win. And this was one of my very first biggest heartbreaks in my life. The day I found out that I won, she basically told me I didn't deserve to win, and that she couldn't understand why I won. And it just broke my heart because I loved her deeply, and I still do. It was just heartbreaking. It was just jealousy. It was just the emotions probably were overwhelming for her. And now I do understand that. But I took it so badly. I cried for days when she did that. And so that was hard. That was bittersweet. But, you know, you learn from that. Anyway, so that was an exciting moment. But I got the pageant bug. And then when my parents left Cadillac or left Owasso to start a new business up in Cadillac, Michigan, which is where my family had homesteaded. We lived downstate during my formative years because my dad had to get a job, and the biggest jobs were with the car factories, and he worked for General Motors in Flint, Michigan. He worked on the truck plant. He also spent some time on the Corvette, which was kind of cool. He was real proud of that. My dad, Bernard George Odette is his name. Anyway, so back to the pageants. So I had a great time being in the Miss Cadillac pageant. Third runner up the first year I tried out for it, and then first runner up the second year I tried out for it. But I really enjoyed it. Did tap dancing and a jazz dance. I did my first competition in Cadillac. I did a jazz dance to I Feel the Earth Move by Carole King. And then my second year, I did a tap dance to the old Charleston song called Charlie, My Boy. And that was a lot of fun. I loved it. I loved meeting all the people. And I still see Nancy Foster, who was one of our guides. I see other dancers in the area, and we had a lot of fun back in those days. And I really have no regrets over those days. I know a lot of the feminists think it's terrible, but you know what was there for us to do back in the 50s or the 60s and 70s? Women were not really encouraged to do sports. And so dancing was something that we could do, and a natural progression to dance was the pageant circuit. And so I did not feel bad about being in pageants. I didn't feel exploited. I really enjoyed it. And so I know a lot of people don't agree with me, but you weren't there. So it's hard for you to judge if you weren't there. Anyway, then I got the animal bug back, you know, kind of flipped back and forth between animals and dancing. And when I went to school at Michigan State University, I went to on to be hoped to become a veterinarian, and took all of the pre-vet classes, and had a wonderful time with my best friend, my bestie, Michelle Lefevre, and she ended up marrying Rick Davis, and her name later became Michelle Davis. And we ended up just having a glorious time at Michigan State. We rushed Alpha Chi Omega together, and we had so much fun. I worked at the library, which was huge. I became a librarian. I love books, and I enjoyed my 4 years of working at the Michigan State Library. It was like going to heaven every day, going to work. My job would be mending books, making sure that books were in the right order out in the shelves. They call that shelf reading. So I did shelf reading, and I just loved my time at Michigan State. I was recruited for Michigan State. I ended up changing my major to packaging engineering, and I took the technical route in packaging engineering, and was recruited by the IBM Corporation International Business Machines, and took a job with them. First, I had an internship, and prior to my internship, I got married to Dave Welliver, my love of my life, and we ended up moving out to Rochester, Minnesota, where the Mayo Clinic is. And we also ended up spending 6 months out there. Wonderful time, learned a lot, did an important piece of work while I was out there called the ISLE study, which was referenced many times by IBM one of the things that I had to do was to make sure that there was a very safe method for walking around the plant in IBM Rochester. And so we did a study to see about the traffic patterns inside the plant. And I did like 3 months worth of data gathering and then created a colorful bar charted report with my findings regarding the safety of the aisles and the transit of goods in and around this, huge 8-building site that was connected through walkways. And we ended up putting in a wire guided vehicle to help transport the goods throughout the plant. So it was the leading edge of robotics, and I really enjoyed technology. And that was so exciting to work in technology and to see that come, see robotics back in the earliest days of robotics. And so that was exciting. Another amazing thing that happened while I was in IBM Rochester, we had to do packaging testing on the IBM PC prior to its announcement. And so we would package test the IBM PC. We would bring it in a shrouded box with handcuffs, and it was a biggest secret. And we brought it in the packaging test lab and we tested it. And later it became this phenomenon product called the personal computer. And that was so exciting to do that. So I went back to Michigan State after my internship and graduated, and then went to work for IBM full-time as a full-fledged IBMer in IBM Tucson. I was the first packaging engineer hired at the IBM Tucson plant out of Michigan State University. And I loved it, of course. It was beautiful climate. Tucson, Arizona is just a beautiful city. And it was kind of a small town at the time. And as all cities, it's continually growing. University of Arizona is located there. And I made my first IBM best friend, and that was Mary Ann Ledwith. She was Mary Ann Russ at the time. And we had a lot of times, and good times, and she introduced me to the whole concept of a singing guitar Bible study. And we had so much fun at those back out there in Tucson. And then lucky me, I had my first child, David Welliver. He was born in Tucson. And shortly thereafter, I was offered a job to come back to Michigan. And I did. I took it so I could be with my mom and dad and my family. So I transferred from Tucson back to the IBM Grand Rapids office. And shortly thereafter, I had my second surprise, which is Brian Welliver. Awesome. And then shortly thereafter, I had Caitlin Welliver, now Caitlin Koshiba. So that's a little bit about my background. So let's see what the next question is. Okay, so I mentioned that we had pioneered Michigan back in the 1880s. And my next question on how has your family's pioneering history in Michigan influenced your approach to life and business? So I believe that most Americans that have a rich history, and we all have rich histories, we all have a very interesting story to tell and how we ended up here, unless you're Native American and you have your own interesting history. Mine is that of very, very English upbringing. My family, as all families, have, many branches to the family tree. And the one that comes to mind most is my English roots. I can trace back my English roots to a ship called the Hector, and the Hector left London in 1636, and there was another ship that left. So there were two ships that left England to come to America in 1636. Prior to this launch, the pilgrims or the pilgrims, I know pilgrims and Puritans. Pilgrims, I didn't know this, but did you know that if you're a pilgrim, you came on the Mayflower? If you're a Puritan, you came on any other ship. So my family were Puritans, not pilgrims, because pilgrims were only Mayflower people. So because we were not on the Mayflower, we're going to call them Puritans. So the Puritans that I come from were from an interesting history. They were very much persecuted, just like a lot of people back in those days. They came from Kent, and their money came from a secret product that they would create, and it would be called velvet. So they had a loom, a very secret loom that created the fabric called velvet. And it was a loom that they hid away, and they were the only place, only company, or only family where the royalty of Europe, including England and France and Germany and all of those different monarchies, would come to Kent to get this beautiful soft fabric to make their robes and cloaks with this new fabric called velvet. So because it was unique, they were able to upscale and charge a lot of money for it so that they had some savings. And so they were able to escape the persecution of the Church of England and the laws at the time. So they ended up skedaddling out of London, and they hid over in the Netherlands, as a lot of Puritans would do prior to coming to the New World. So they went to the Netherlands, and then they regrouped their poop, and they decided that on this particular expedition, or this group of Puritans that would come to the United States, or to the New World, if you will, at that time, they were going to do it right. So they had John Harvard's books for learning, and they brought all of the best disciplines on the boats. And so they all took off to America. They went into Boston Harbor, and they established Harvard University with Harvard's books. He died shortly thereafter. And my particular family at that time, the name was Gilbert, and they ended up thinking that Boston was too sinful. So they decided they were going to leave Boston and start their own town. And they did. And it's a little town called New Haven, Connecticut. And that's where they started Yale. Now, I tell you all of that, and it's so braggadocious, but it's cool. It's my background. But I won't tell you, well, I will tell you, I also have horse thieves and bootleggers in my background, and we'll get to that later. So the question was pioneering spirit. I think we have that in our blood. I think anyone that has the gumption to leave and go far, far beyond your homeland and start anew, there's something special about the pioneering spirit of the people who founded and started this thing called America. And also, the women in my family have always been such go-getters. I know my grandmother was a go-getter. She was a horse trainer. She could kind of like a horse whisperer. My grandma was amazing. Grandma Otis. Her name was Mary Rebecca Otis, and she was born on Sunrise Lake near Tustin, Michigan. She ended up her mom died 10 days after she was born. Her mom died of infection from birth. So she died from the childbirth. Things weren't as sanitary as they are today. And so her dad remarried, and she ended up having like 12 half siblings, but she was a really amazing lady. She became a nurse. She was a fortune teller in the circus. Lots of very cool background. She's amazing. She was amazing, and I knew her. One of the memories I have of her is a poem she would say about my brother, Joe. She would say, "Here are the things I know about my oldest grandson, Joe. He is really one swell guy. He don't smoke, drink, swear, steal, or lie." Well, she was a doll. She loved Joe very, very much. And Kenny, my brother, and me. She would always give me chocolate milk, and I would just love it. She's a doll. And so that was my grandma. So she was amazing. And so was my mom. My mom started her own business. She started Cozy Kennels, which is an old company. Some of you old time Cadillac people might remember Cozy Kennels. She, when she was in her 90s, she was awarded the Athena Award for Athena Award is for women who help other women in business. And at that time, when she won the award, almost every single grooming parlor in and around Cadillac, in about a 3-county area, the groomers were trained and taught by my mother. She taught many, many people how to groom dogs and cats, and her legacy goes on to this very day. So I believe that that was a very important contribution to our local area and our local businesses in Cadillac. And so that really spawned my entrepreneurial journey. And at that, I'll close out this particular interview with myself. And I'll continue with more questions tomorrow. I hope you have a wonderful day, and God bless you.